Cowboys Nation, the atmosphere around this team right now feels like one of those quiet buildups before a storm, and everything seems to circle back to one central situation that defined the entire offseason. There's a growing sense that something big is coming, but at the same time, there's still a lot left unsaid, especially when it comes to the future of one of the most intriguing offensive weapons on this roster. The excitement is there, the expectations are high, but the business side of football has a way of turning optimism into tension if things are not handled at the right moment. Inside the organization, there is no shortage of confidence about what this player can bring to the field. Coaches are already talking about ways to maximize his impact, hinting at a more dynamic offensive approach that involves moving him across different alignments, creating mismatches, and giving defenses something to constantly worry about. That kind of planning does not happen unless there's a genuine belief that he's going to be a key piece of the system. At the same time, belief alone does not secure a future. Contracts do, and right now, that part of the equation is still sitting in the background, unresolved. That is where things start to get complicated. Because while the football side of the operation seems fully invested, the lack of real progress on a long-term agreement introduces a level of uncertainty that is impossible to ignore. When there are no concrete negotiations taking place, or at least none that have been publicly acknowledged, it opens the door for speculation. And in the world of professional football, speculation tends to grow quickly. Before long, what starts as a simple delay can evolve into a storyline that follows the team throughout the entire offseason. And this is exactly the kind of situation where timing becomes everything. The offseason program is approaching, and with it comes the first real indicator of how both sides are approaching this relationship. These early workouts might be labeled as voluntary, but they often reveal a lot about where players stand mentally. If a key name is absent, people notice. If he shows up, it sends a different kind of message. But based on the current tone and everything that has been said so far, there is a strong feeling that participation is far from guaranteed. Even looking ahead to the mandatory portions of the offseason, there is still uncertainty. The rules might limit certain consequences, but that does not change the overall perception. When a player of this caliber is not fully engaged in team activities, it becomes a talking point, and that attention only grows louder as the calendar moves forward. The deeper you get into the offseason without a deal, the more pressure builds, not just on the player, but on the entire organization to find a solution. And then there's the date that everyone quietly has circled, whether they admit it or not. Mid-July becomes the true turning point. That is when decisions have to be made, when the window for a long-term agreement begins to close, and when the situation can shift from manageable to potentially volatile. If an agreement is not reached by that point, the options become more limited, and the possibility of a prolonged standoff becomes very real. That is when things can escalate, and not in a way that benefits the team's preparation for the upcoming season. What makes this even more interesting is the contrast between what is being said and what is being done. On one hand, there is clear communication about how important this player is to the offensive structure. On the other hand, the absence of a finalized deal suggests that there are still gaps that need to be bridged. That contrast creates a tension that is hard to ignore, because it raises a simple but important question. If he is truly central to the plan, why has the situation not already been resolved? There are also subtle signs within the locker room dynamic that could play a role here. Chemistry matters, especially when you're talking about building a long-term core. The connection between key players on offense can influence decisions in ways that are not always visible from the outside. When relationships are strong, it can create an environment where players want to stay and build something together. That kind of bond can be a powerful factor, but again, it is not a replacement for the structure and security that comes with a finalized contract. As all of this unfolds, there is an underlying concern that the situation could become a recurring distraction. The last thing any team wants is to have a major storyline lingering over every stage of the offseason, from workouts to training camp and beyond. Once narratives like this take hold, they tend to resurface at the most inconvenient times, often overshadowing the actual progress being made on the field. And in a league where focus is everything, That kind of distraction can have real consequences. At the same time, there is still an opportunity to handle this the right way. The organization has the resources, the motivation, and the clear understanding of what this player brings to the table. The question is whether all of that will translate into action before the situation reaches a breaking point. Because once deadlines start passing and uncertainty turns into frustration, the tone can change quickly, and what could have been a straightforward extension becomes a much more complicated negotiation. And while all of this is happening on the offensive side of the ball, it is impossible to ignore the broader picture. This team is still shaping its identity, still addressing key areas, and still trying to position itself as a true contender. Every decision made during this period has a ripple effect, influencing not just the upcoming season, but the long-term direction of the franchise. That is why situations like this carry so much weight, because they are not isolated issues. They are part of a much larger puzzle that the organization is trying to put together piece by piece. While the contract situation continues to hover over the team, the front office is also dealing with another major reality that cannot be ignored, and that is the roster itself still has several gaps that need to be addressed before the season begins. One of the most obvious areas that continues to come up in discussions is the linebacker position. It is not a secret. It is not something hidden behind coach speak. It is a clear need, and even the coaching staff has openly acknowledged that the team has been looking for solutions. They explored options, they evaluated players, they tried to make moves, but sometimes the market does not fall the way a team expects, and when that happens, adjustments have to be made. This is where the strategy becomes interesting, because when free agency does not solve the problem, the attention naturally shifts toward the draft. And the way the organization is talking about the upcoming draft makes it sound like they believe they have enough flexibility and enough draft capital to maneuver if necessary. That could mean staying put and selecting the best available player, or it could mean moving around the board to target someone they believe fits perfectly into their system. The important part is that they're clearly not ruling anything out, and that openness usually signals that multiple scenarios are already being discussed behind the scenes. The linebacker situation is particularly important because that position often becomes the communication center of the defense. It is not just about tackling or stopping the run. It is about reading offenses, adjusting formations, and making sure everyone is aligned correctly before the snap. Asking a rookie to step into that role immediately is not easy, but it is not impossible either. It depends heavily on the player's instincts, football intelligence, and ability to adapt quickly to the speed of the professional game. If the right player is available, the team might be willing to take that risk, especially if they believe he can grow into a leader of the defense. At the same time, relying entirely on young players can be dangerous, especially at a position that requires so much communication and awareness. That is why there is still a strong possibility that the team looks for a veteran presence at some point, whether that happens before the draft, during the draft through a trade, or even after the draft when rosters begin to shift around the league. Successful teams often build depth in waves, not all at once. And sometimes the most important additions happen later in the offseason when unexpected opportunities appear. Another area that continues to generate conversation is the secondary, specifically the nickel corner position. The coaching staff seems to have a clear vision of how they want to structure the defense, and part of that vision involves keeping certain cornerbacks on the outside rather than moving them inside. That decision influences the entire defensive alignment because the nickel corner role has become one of the most important positions in modern football. With so many offenses using 3 wide receivers as a base formation, the nickel defender is essentially a starter, not a backup or rotational player. Finding the right player for that role is not just about coverage ability. The nickel corner often has to defend quick slot receivers, support the run, blitz occasionally, and react quickly in short space. It is a demanding position that requires versatility and awareness. That is why the team is evaluating multiple options, including current players on the roster and potential draft prospects who specialize in playing inside coverage. The draft class at defensive back appears to have several players who could fit that role, which increases the likelihood that this position will be addressed at some point during draft weekend. And then there is the bigger picture strategy when it comes to the first round of the draft. The organization has made it clear that they want to remain flexible and take the best player available rather than forcing a selection based purely on positional need. That philosophy can be very effective if the draft board falls in your favor, but it also requires discipline. Sometimes the best player available does not match your biggest need, and that is when front offices have to make difficult decisions that can shape the roster for years to come. There is also the possibility of trades, which always adds another layer of unpredictability to draft night. Moving up in the draft requires giving up valuable assets, but it can be worth it if the team believes a specific player can become a cornerstone piece. Moving down, on the other hand, can allow a team to collect more picks and build depth across multiple positions. The organization has shown in the past that they are not afraid to make these kinds of moves if the opportunity presents itself, so it would not be surprising to see some movement when the draft finally arrives. All of these decisions are connected in one way or another. The contract situation, the linebacker need, the secondary adjustments, and the draft strategy are not separate stories. They're all part of the same offseason puzzle. Every move influences another move, and every decision shapes the direction of the team moving forward. That is why this period is so important. Championships are not only built during the season. They are built during the offseason through smart decisions, calculated risks, and long-term planning. Right now, the Cowboys are in that critical phase where the foundation for the upcoming season is being built piece by piece. Some of those pieces are already in place, some are still being negotiated, and others have not even been selected yet. But by the time training camp arrives, the expectation is that this roster will look more complete, more balanced, and more prepared to compete at a high level. The question is not whether changes are coming, because they are. The real question is whether the changes they make over the next few months will be enough to push this team to the level they believe they can reach. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Whispers are growing louder around the league as a potential blockbuster move begins to take shape deep in the heart of Texas. According to emerging reports and quiet locker room chatter, the Dallas Cowboys could be on the verge of securing a major defensive reinforcement, with RASHAN Gary's name suddenly entering the conversation in dramatic fashion. While nothing has been officially confirmed, sources close to the situation suggest that internal discussions have intensified in recent days. The Cowboys, long searching for a dominant presence to elevate their defensive front, are believed to be exploring the possibility of bringing in Gary as a centerpiece addition. Known for his explosiveness off the edge and relentless motor, Gary would represent exactly the kind of high-impact player capable of reshaping the identity of the unit. The speculation comes at a time when Dallas is reportedly looking to make a bold statement. There's a sense within the organization that incremental changes are no longer enough, and that a headline move could be necessary to push the team into a new tier of contention. Gary's profile fits that ambition perfectly. His combination of athleticism, power, and versatility has made him one of the most intriguing defensive players in the league, and his potential arrival would immediately send a message across the conference. Insiders hint that negotiations, if they exist, are being handled with extreme discretion. Still, the smoke surrounding this rumor continues to thicken. Fans have already begun to speculate about how Gary would integrate into the Cowboys' defensive scheme, imagining a front that becomes faster, more aggressive, and far more difficult to contain. Skeptics, however, caution that deals of this magnitude are rarely straightforward. Financial considerations, team dynamics, and timing all play crucial roles in whether such a move can materialize. Yet the very fact that Gary's name is being linked to Dallas has sparked a wave of anticipation that is hard to ignore. For now, it remains a developing story, one fueled by speculation, ambition, and the ever-present allure of a game-changing acquisition. If the whispers prove true, the Cowboys may be preparing to make one of the most talked-about moves in recent memory. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.